And welcome and good evening, everybody, to the Whole Agenda Radio Show. I am your host, Robert Peppino, and it's a pleasure to be here with you once again on this wonderful Friday night. I hope you have all had a wonderful week. I know I have. Things just keep getting better and better, at least in my opinion. We all understand that things are rough out there. There's a lot of information coming out. There's a lot of problems in this world, but you know what? We all make our reality. We want to make it what it is, and I'll tell you what, my whole attitude about life has changed for a lot of reasons that you guys know about. But the reality is that we are all fighting for the same cause, for the truth to come out. And this is what this show's about. And this is why I've been doing this show, and I think this is why everybody's been doing shows like this and about this for so long, because we're tired of being lied to. We're tired of all the lies from the governments and all the intergovernmental agencies that create all the nonsensical noise that we have to live with on a daily basis. But the best part is that I believe that we're all waking up. We're all waking up, and it is people like myself and my guest tonight, will introduce in just a second, who have been making the concerted effort to wake people up on a massive scale, and that's what this is all about. And I'm very happy and proud to be part of this network right here on Revolution Radio. And really quick, as always, before I get to my guest, I'd like to say that, we are the number one listener-sponsored network on the air. We're it. That's it. We're number one. We have over 500,000 listeners. You know that. We're growing exponentially on a daily basis, which it's an extraordinary thing. But of course, we do need your support because we have those bills to pay. And if you can help support the network, it's imperative that you do. If you have that extra dollar, please do so. Like my good friend Lorian Fritton says, and I know I tend to repeat myself, but Lorian, my dear friend, says, if everybody listening to this network, which is 500,000 plus, would simply donate $1, this station would never have to worry about another dollar being donated to it because it would carry it forward, for the next 30 years, which would be fantastic in my book. But Hawk's got some great deals out there, gang. Of course, he's got the best of 2013 shows of your favorite hosts for $30 edited, the whole year. Can't beat that. Of course, he's also got which has been advertised forever, the 35,000 non-GMO seeds with a storable shelf life of 25 years, okay, for $100. I don't know who else is advertising that. Great deal. And, of course, the USB bullet drive with a 900 survival documents for $50. So, for all of you new listeners, just being aware to this, go to the support page, check it out, look at those offers, and maybe make that purchase. Now, for those of you who just want to donate, you know what? There's a support link. You can do it through PayPal, and it's $1, $2, whatever. It's a great support, and we appreciate it. And I certainly appreciate it because it helps keep my show on the air and everybody else's show on the air. Now, moving forward, first time on this show anyway, I'm very proud to have this man on. He is basically he has been a long-time investigator of everything, okay? Simply man after my own heart because these are all the things I talk about. And my guest's name is Mr. Mike Luckman. Now, Luckman was the first person to blow the whistle on the Roswell UFOs crash, Star Wars, and the roles played by former President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Ronald Reagan, and Jimmy Carter in the ever-widening cosmic cover-up dubbed Aliengate. Now, Mr. Luckman also leaked the story of a secret UFO report financed by the late billionaire philanthropist Lawrence Rockefeller. I'm sure we're all aware of that. And distributed to over 1,000 movers and shakers on the world stage. John F. Kennedy Jr. requested that Mr. Luckman send him a copy of the same briefing document sent to all members of Congress. Also, a featured guest on major TV networks, of course, CNN, Fox News Channel, the O'Reilly Factor, Geraldo, and the Fox and Friends. Mr. Luckman is the heir apparent to the renowned Planet X author, Mr. Zachariah Sitchin, which is, I hold him in very high regards, and Tom Van Flanderen, former chief astronomer from the United States Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., who made the government's initial announcement about the discovery of the 12th planet. That made international headlines. Mr. Luckman and Van Flanderen introduced to the public the stunning information of human-like faces on Mars, photographed by NASA during the press conferences in New York City. They were joined by Mr. Brian O'Leary, and he was the former NASA scientist, astronaut, originally chosen by NASA to be the first man on Mars. Mr. Luckman, welcome to the program. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here tonight.
Thanks very much, Robert. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it is my pleasure. And again, Mike, if I may, I've only been talking about this for the last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, you've been doing this. You have been doing this for a very, very long time. You've made a career out of exposing the truths which have been hidden from us for such a long time. I've been a big advocate of Planet X and the planetary change, and I call it climate extreme. They call it climate change. No, it's climate extreme. We're watching it on a daily basis as things unfold. The weather changes. The patterns of weather have gone to the extremes, and yet you have the mainstream media, of course, not recognizing this, but local press will report on this, which is, at this point, at least we're getting some coverage of what's happening. From your opinion, let's just jump into the climate part of this, Mike, and then we'll move forward, because I also know you wrote the book Alien Rock, which I want to talk about.
Okay.
So let's, Mike, if we can, start with your position on where you got involved with, Planet X.
I've been fiction. Actually, his writings was what initially got me interested in Planet X, and it's just one of those things. I mean, if you believe in fate, which I sort of do at this point in my life. I had the pleasure of meeting Tom Van Flanderen, who became a pretty good friend, and he was the one guy who had the kind of the credentials that I could always bounce things off. In other words, if there were official NASA photographs and I had particular frames that I wanted him to examine that I thought were worth looking at, he's the one guy who I could call up, and he would tell me right off the bat whether it was something real or whether it was some kind of an artifact, pixelization perhaps, as part of the process of broadcasting the image. So I got to know Tom, and I've been involved with the UFO research thing for a very long time. I guess it's pushing maybe 40 years at this point. I started out at the time when Close Encounters, the movie, was about to come out. And I had a book under contract originally with Simon & Schuster, the same publisher that later put out Alien Rock, the Rock and Roll Extraterrestrial Connection, which you alluded to. The original book that I was going to put out was going to be a visual book on the subject, because I was really curious, and I was editing a newspaper, publishing a newspaper here in New York called the New York Daily Planet. It was an alternative newspaper. We were looking for different departments in the paper that would be a little bit different from the run-of-the-mill sort of thing. And I began to contact UFO organizations and realized that there really were, even back then, some compelling photographic evidence as well as documentation that we were indeed being visited by obviously advanced intelligences. And so this started, all to once you're in this subject, you don't get out. I mean, it's like emotional quicksand, and I know very few people who've ever quit who have gotten involved with it, because it's really, very substantive, and there's so much out there. I don't have any problem in debating either Planet X or the existence of UFOs or any of the, or exchange or any of these things. But at this point, frankly, I mean, just looking at the UFO cover-up, I have in my possession 400 videotape depositions by former military guys who worked at the Pentagon, a lot of them in the 1960s and 70s, who are prepared to go public about Roswell and about the UFO cover-up in general if they're granted presidential immunity, something which the late Lawrence Rockefeller, the billionaire philanthropist based here in New York, tried to accomplish. And he actually financed meetings that took place out on the West Coast and even at his ranch in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, of former military guys who wanted to break open the Roswell thing, as he was very much interested in doing. He entertained the Clintons at his ranch. This goes back a ways. At the time when Bill Clinton was running for re-election, and he was going to donate money to Bill Clinton's re-election campaign. So he had a captive audience with the Clintons, and he had them there for about a week or so. However, what he didn't bank on was, and he did make the donation, by the way, but what he didn't bank on is that one morning Hillary was up with Rockefeller before Bill was still asleep, and Hillary said, please don't bring this subject up again, even though that was pretty much the reason why Rockefeller had invited him out there in the first place.
Right.
And at the time, I had leaked a story to the New York Daily News, which they ran with a big story that he was going to finance, donate sizable money to his re-election campaign, but also he wanted to lecture them on UFOs. And Bill Clinton spoke to Rockefeller and said to Rockefeller at the ranch, said to Rockefeller, he compared it to a tar baby, which is an expression in an old folk tale, and basically what he was saying is that it was a sticky kind of issue, and the more you hit the tar baby, the more you get stuck in the quicksand, or the more you stick to the tar baby, and it was something that was not politically a smart thing for him to be doing. So what he said on the Jimmy Kimmel show about a month ago, that he had investigated Roswell, that he had looked into Area 51, well, I can tell you that he avoided looking into Roswell. And the irony of this is that Bill Clinton was extremely interested in Roswell. Bill Clinton was extremely interested in UFOs. When he first came to office, his golfing buddy at the time, Webster Hubbell, who was later indicted, but at that time he was appointed Assistant Attorney General under Janet Reno, and he said to Hubbell that he wanted him to do two things when he got over to the Justice Department. Number one, to look into the question of who killed John F. Kennedy, and secondly, the truth about UFOs. He is very, very, very interested in learning the truth specifically about Roswell. But, because of his political concerns, he decided to look away from the evidence that was handed to him, frankly, almost on a silver platter by Rockefeller, and he dodged it, as of course other presidents have done as well. But Obama, President Obama is doing, right now.
Of course.
So the presidents have been very, very much, involved with this. And as far as Planet X, I offered to debate David Morrison, who's the NASA's astrophysicist, and on the existence of Planet X, and he refused, just categorically refused to debate me on that or anything else. And the reason I contacted Morrison was that he had put out sort of what amounted to on video a preemptive strike against the end of the world scenario, a la the Mayan calendar, the end date of the Mayan calendar. And a lot of people were concerned about that and how real that was, and whether there was anything to be concerned about. Things really blowing up at that period. And I happened to be in touch with several leading Mayan elders from both Mexico and Guatemala, and even had an opportunity to meet with the Mayan Pope, the highest spiritual leader of the Mayan people, who was based in Guatemala and who came here to address the United Nations. I did an hour-long radio interview with him. And what the Mayans were telling me was that, no, of course there's no end-of-the-world thing happening on that specific date. However, they did say that we were going to have to go through all kinds of very, very serious Earth changes in this particular period, and that it would happen for quite some time, and that, basically the human race would come out of it alive, but not everyone's going to come out alive. And that's what they were saying. Now, there's little doubt in my mind at this point. Now, of course, the big issue with Planet X is people say, well, where is it? If it's such a big planet, 5 times bigger than Earth, supposedly, according to Sitchin, where is it? Why don't we see it? And people say, well, it's behind the sun. It's this, that. There are photographs on the Internet galore. And the reason, I can't be specific as to the reason why we don't see it. It's probably at a distance, but I can tell you that there are something like 24 astronomers, some of them very prominent, who have died mysterious deaths, similar to what happened in the aftermath of the John F. Kennedy assassination, who specialize in investigating near-Earth objects, namely comets, meteors, and asteroids. Now, we're being bombarded, might be a slightly strong word, but it almost amounts to that. We are seeing more meteors and asteroids and comets as well, mostly meteors and asteroids, coming at Earth than we have seen in our lifetime. The increase, I would say, is at least, according to the American Meteorological Society, at least 20-25% increase.
Well, Mike, if I can interrupt just for 1 second, I'm going to concur with what you're saying, because what I've been saying now for, quite a while is that I think long before we really actually get the physical view of Planet X, where it is in the sky and we're seeing it, we're going to be smashed by some sort of big rock. With the amount of asteroids, what happened in 2013, was it February in 2013 with the explosion over Chelyabinsk? Okay. Yeah. That was just a small example of it. So that's what I've been saying all along. I said, gang, I think we're going to get smacked by a big rock, and what you said made perfect sense, that yes, humanity is going to survive this, but there's going to be a few less people on the planet. Please continue.
Yeah, I'm afraid a lot less people. Now, it ties in also with the Vatican very much. The third secret of Fatima, not everyone's heard of Fatima, or not everyone's heard of the third secret, of the existence of the secrets of Fatima, but third secret of Fatima pertains to a large, what's called a bolide, basically like a large body from space coming toward Earth, and not necessarily impacting on Earth directly, not a direct hit necessarily, and probably not, but causing flooding of biblical proportions with, as Pope John said himself, when confronted by some pilgrims in, I think in Fatima, Portugal, in any event, he said, he was asked, well, how come you don't, the church did not release this, because it was supposed to be released a very, very long time ago. First and second secrets were released, and they were accurate. They had to do with World War I and World War II. And he said, well, if there was a circumstance in which from 1 minute to the next, millions of people would lose their lives as a result of massive flooding, it would be pointless to put this information out. He basically admitted it. And this is backed up further by the late Father Malachi Martin, who was a leading demonologist in the Catholic Church and very close to the leaders in the Vatican.
Yes.
And Malachi Martin was privy to the information of the third secret of Fatima, which has still not been released to this day. And by the way, there's a whole movement inside the Catholic Church, and their websites devoted to this and everything, of Catholics demanding to know what this third secret is and why has the Church withheld it all these years. So Malachi Martin was the one who said that he had seen it, and after being questioned repeatedly over a period of some years, Art Bell on the old Coast to Coast show.
I remember all those shows, Mike. I listened to all of them.
Right. Well, Art said that Art asked him, And finally he answered that it had to do with he called it a bolide coming from space that was going to wipe out a large portion of the population. He said it directly. So the third secret has to do with that. And there it is, the connection with Planet X. So whether you look at it, I mean, there's so many different things. I'll tell you one thing: people cannot ignore the buildup of the meteors and the asteroids and comets. Sitchin had said, and I remember this, and it resonated with me when about a year ago when the meteor went over Russia and injured 1,200 people with flying glass. They were lucky that it was actual an impact. Sitchin had always said, and he wrote, that Planet X was going to was part of a debris field. It had a debris field that went along with it, and that some of the debris preceded the planet because of the gravitational effects. So this is what we're seeing now, the very early stages of it. And we've been very, very lucky so far. I mean, it's like a cosmic shooting gallery out there, and I've been challenging, and I'm still working on it. Tom Van Flanden passed away a couple of years ago, but I just sent an email recently to his son. I'm hoping to hear back. I am waiting for some astronomer who can explain to me an alternative theory. Where are these comets, asteroids, and meteors coming from? Because they all hang out in the outer part of our solar system. It's extremely active, and that's exactly where Planet X was. And it brings the debris, so-called debris field, the meteors, comets, and asteroids, with it, and even pushes it ahead of the planet. So that's what is happening, and there'd be every reason in the world, in terms of world governments and trying not to create panic and everything else, to let to keep that information under wraps and the required assassinations. I think that there's no doubt in my mind that they would do whatever they deem necessary to look out for the for the public from to avoid panic, but to keep the lid on really tight. And I believe that that's what's happening. It's what's responsible for many of these other earth changes, these ruptures in the earth, earthquakes, opening up of these. When we had all these giant sinkholes, there was one somewhere recently. It was like 2 blocks long.
Yeah.
I mean, why is that happening? The activity around the Ring of Fire, the earthquakes, and the weather is absolutely on a tear, and it's totally out of control, and almost everywhere. And if it isn't one place, it's somewhere else. But many places are being hit at the same time. So, I do think that we are. I'm not a very religious person, but I do think that we're living in what's been referred to as the end times. And how many years do we have? Who can say exactly? But I think also that as that planet moves closer to us, it also raises the question of the possible inhabitants of that planet and their potential interaction with us, and what our position should be vis-a-vis those inhabitants who are called the Anunnaki, according to the Sitchin's interpretation of the Sumerian text.
Well, Michael, can I ask you something? I mean, do you think? I mean, I understand that Zachariah did an interpretation of the Sumerian scrolls. I understand he interpreted it as best he could. Do you think that maybe that the Anunnaki is just, because I've heard this before and I want to get your take, that maybe it is a generic term for genetic manipulation from many races who have come here on planet Earth and seeded this planet?
Oh, I absolutely believe that they did that. I absolutely believe that they did that, and they did that, supposedly to, originally they needed manpower to dig dig gold, which they needed to line their atmosphere. I absolutely believe that. And moreover, they also seems ingested gold, and this, by the way, is what's known as well, it's called different things. One of the names for it is white powdered gold.
Monatomic.
Yeah. It's actually available for purchase on the internet now. How good it is and how pure it is. The only thing I can say about and they live like if you buy into the story at all, they live supposedly exceptionally long lives here on Earth. I mean, hundreds of years and maybe a lot longer than that. Reg Presley, by the way, we'll be talking, I'm sure, about rock and roll a little bit later.
Oh, yeah.
Reg Presley of the group The Trogs, who did Wild, best known for the song Wild Thing. He was a devotee of the gold part, of taking gold to extend his life. Now, he did pass on not that long ago, and I forget what his medical condition was, but he had said all along, and this is where that, on that issue, he had said all along that there was, certainly no guarantee, and, he believed that there wasn't, I guess he checked with doctors, whether there wasn't anything, harmful that could happen, so he was going to take it, and he did take it, and it didn't save him, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't work, or doesn't work for other people, depending on, everything about their physiology.
I want to go back a little bit if we can, because the Ros, because the Planet X thing is a big thing for me, but also the Roswell, because I've had my own personal contact experience with, and I call them our brothers and sisters. That's what I truly call them, Mike. But going back to Roswell, when you first got involved in this, I mean, did you have a chance to talk to Jesse Marshall Jr. when, that's originally, when the real story broke at that point? What if you did you have your thought process of what was taking place at that very moment when you talked to Jesse, if you did?
Well, I talked to Jesse briefly. What I had Jesse do, and I still have it, is to draw me. I was having a UFO conference here in New York, a rather large one, and I asked him to please draw, at that time, not too many people were familiar with it, a photograph, a drawing of what the hieroglyphic symbols that were seen on pieces associated with the Roswell crash, what they look like. And they look sort of, generally speaking, a little bit like Egyptian type of hieroglyphics. What's very interesting on that one, by the way, is that is that a few years ago, some pictures were taken by a camera inside the Great Pyramid, and sure enough, there were symbols that looked vaguely similar, like flower petals almost, these symbols, and what really got me was that the color was much the same. It was kind of a reddish purple. The color in both what Jesse Marcel saw and what was inside the pyramid was almost exactly the same.
Mike, I saw the same thing. I saw the reproductions or renderings of whatever they had done on TV, and it was like a purple fuchsia type color. And you know what? They were trying to say that these were symbols used in these balloons that were being released in the atmosphere to detect ionic radiation in the atmosphere being detonated that's a bunch of nonsense. That's the biggest bull-cocking story I've ever heard in my life. Well, I just have to say that.
Yeah, well, what's even more nonsense is a bigger nonsense is the Air Force, which put out three reports trying to disprove Roswell, and the last one showed. They referred to and they showed photographs, and even this photograph made the New York Times front page. These test dummies, which were full size, like human being size, like 6'5", whatever, 6 foot, and they try to claim that those were dropped and that's what the people saw. That's what they thought were alien corpses.
Yeah, right, because alien corpses have very, normal size human heads, but what they discovered at the crashes, not only one, but two, at Roswell, were deemed, very small people. Now, if they were human size, dummies that they had dropped from very high above, and those dummies are meant to take a serious beating, how would those heads be swollen the size of twice, 3 times the size of a normal head, because we're talking about plastic and wood. I find that very curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo 14 astronaut, this goes back quite a number of years ago. We were on the Geraldo show together. There were other guests on as well, but I had an opportunity to ask him on the air about Roswell, and I could tell that he was a little testy. He didn't like the idea of being put on the spot in front of millions of viewers. On the other hand, he became much more outspoken, is highly outspoken these days about the Roswell incident. And he happened to, I think he was born in Roswell, grew up in Roswell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he had the opportunity to meet with a member or staff member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon in Washington, and he asked them about Roswell and whether it really involved the recovery of extraterrestrial beings or the bodies, the remains of extraterrestrial beings, and he was told yes. And after, I guess, from being interviewed or the information coming out, he never released, I don't believe, the name of the person, but in any event, the person who he had spoken to at the Pentagon, claimed that he had never said that, and once it was out, they were concerned, so they tried to put the lid back on. But that's very revealing right there.
You know what? It's interesting you say that, because I think, and this is my personal viewpoint, and you can, jump in at any time here, but I think that, Edgar Mitchell always wanted to speak out. I think he always knew a lot more than what he always said, but finally, I think in his later years, he said, what can they do to me? I think those concerns went away for the most part. I don't think it would have affected his family as much as it would have, let's say, he would have talked about the same thing, back in the 1980s, let's say.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, these guys who I have on videotape depositions, 400 people, former military guys, I mean, they're all guys who were, in their, basically, I guess, in their 70s. Some of them are in the 80s. And they have very little or nothing to lose, particularly if they're granted presidential immunity. So they were prepared, and still are, to go public about all of this. So there's very little reason to debate. As far as the news media, I happen to be in the public relations business too, and the news media is like terrible beyond belief on these subjects.
Yeah.
In the old days, before social media and stuff, before the nature of news media changed, it would actually, it would be possible to occasionally make breakthroughs on local television, and even bigger than that, to get some of this information out in the public eye. But these days, I mean, the proof is that there were mock congressional hearings held in Washington about a year or so ago with many of these same eyewitnesses that I referred to, former military people. And media, of course, were invited. And there were some media there, but they were like more alternative media and what have you, local media, some local media, but any of the big but basically the network stayed away, and New York Daily News did a story, and it ridiculed the hearing and that sort of thing. So, they just don't want that information out. Now, the day before December 21st, 2012, the so-called last day of the, or not so-called, the last day of the Mayan calendar, which some people said might represent the end of the world. This was something that was put out there not by the Mayans, but by, you know, I don't know who, but disinformation.
Yeah, disinformationists, Mike. Yeah, definitely.
It was like a paper tiger that they could say later, well, the world didn't end. We're still going up. You know, we're still fine. Everyone's fine. And so I was holding a news conference the day before that, which in the old days, frankly, I would have been mobbed with media. I would have expected that there might be, 50 to 100 media representatives or more, cameras all over the place. Nobody showed up. The Associated Press didn't even put it out on the day book. And I tried, in the weeks leading up to that, I tried to, I did contact, I sent emails and I, made some phone calls. I did contact individual reporters because there was quite a big build-up in the media on those type of stories. So I sent out information to writers and editors and people like that, and TV stations as well. And I must have sent out, like, over a period of a couple of months, maybe a couple of hundred of those, and not one came back to me in any fashion of any interest. I was interviewed by Polish television and Russian television, and that was it. That's all that happened on that. And they just do not want to deal with it.
I know. Mike, you could, if you go back to the 1940s and 50s, there wouldn't have been a local or national TV station, whatever national was at the time, ABC, CBS, whatever it was.
Yes.
They would have been on this story immediately, trying to let the public know what was going on. And at that time, the same time, and I said this over and over, since 1947, there has been, when that cover-up took place, all the rest of it took place with the multinational media corporations, which are bought and sold by the banking construct, in my opinion, who have maintained a lid on this whole thing. Because prior to that, when people, and throughout history, throughout the millennia, saucers have been reported, they have been painted, and they have been described. They have been hieroglyphed on rocks and inscribed in rocks in any way, fashion, and form that you can imagine. And yet, all of that, back in the 1940s and 50s, would have been exposed tremendously. Of course, Mr. Arnold, when he talked about the saucers, that was exposed, and he didn't even want that kind of exposure, but it was put out there for people to open up their minds. But after, prior to that event, 1947, everything kind of hushed up. They did the ridiculous investigations, which was called Project Blue Book, which was nothing more than a governmental scam to scam the public, saying there's nothing to this. And then, of course, they had that, the Mr. Hynek, which, thank God, he realized how he's being duped and came on the other side. But the reality is that ever since then, this whole thing has been whitewashed, as whitewashed as it could possibly be. And just recently, and this is I want you to talk about, just recently there's been the revitalization of Bob Lazar going back to, 1989, when he broke the story of when he was working at Area 51, S4, and, he never wanted the limelight, but he had to break that story because, hey, this is what's going on. Now there's been a revitalization in that, and again, you have the media being completely silent, which tells me nothing more that it is being held at bay as much as it possibly can, because I believe that well over 60 to 70% of the world, worldwide, believe and know that this is extremely real, but because they're not hearing it from the media, they're not speaking up about it.
Yeah, well, the polls generally run, a little bit more than 50% of people who believe it, but there are various polls that have been done through the years. As far as Bob Lazar, though, I got to say this. I do believe that something very important is happening at Area 51. I don't know what it is, but I do think that most likely it falls in the category of testing of a vehicle of spacecraft that's been back engineered. However, some of his other claims I think are quite preposterous, and what is important to realize is I've met and spoken to Stan Friedman a bunch of times and met him at conferences and stuff like that. He checked out Lazar's background, and it didn't check out. I forget the specifics on it. You could easily go on the internet and find out, but it did not check out. So, between that and the outrageous, some of the more outrageous claims that he made, I would be highly suspect, the same way as I am of John Lear, who was a son of William Lear Jets, but who also had a background as a CIA, as a pilot working for the CIA. I'd be highly leery of him as far as his claims about so-called underground bases. Now, I'm sure there are underground bases, but as far as deals that have been cut between aliens and the American government or other governments, and there being these horrible experimentation stuff, that's all nonsense. There's just nothing to it. And the reason I speak out about this is that, just as I did about the Fox News Channel's alien autopsy, I was the first one to blow the whistle on that, is because you're dealing with so much information all the time, and some of the stuff, frankly, is just totally made up and disinformation, and it blurs the lines of what's true and what isn't. So as much as it's possible to clear up these misunderstandings or concerns is what I do in the course of my work. And so that's, I just wanted to make that comment about Lazar.
Sure. And you know what? And I think everybody has, their own side of the fence where they sit on that. I don't believe everything that everybody tells me, but, I guess I go by this, Mike. This is my personal viewpoint. What would this man have to gain by coming out and saying something like this when his life basically you put your career, you put your career on the line for exposing something like that. That's where I've always kind of stayed.
Well, where I had the problem with Lazar was that Stan Friedman. Stan was like an academic guy, and a scientist, and he really investigated Lazar's background, and he found out, and you can find the specifics by just going on the internet, that it just did not hold up. I mean, he might have, I don't recall the specifics now, but, he might have had some job or something that put him in or around or near Area 51 perhaps, but as far as his academic background and other background, it just didn't correlate.
Sure. And that's totally fine, because we all have our personal opinion on that. But while we're on that subject really quick, what'd you make of the whole, the whole Victor interview with the alien footage that came out of Area 51? What was your take on that?
On which one now?
On the guy who called himself Victor, and it was actually, oh Lord.
Was it the alien that was supposedly alive in an Area 51 interview?
Right, it was called the Alien Interview, and a guy who described himself as Victor, who did the whole interview in of course.
I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I mean, to me the red flag goes up on something like that, just as it did on the alien autopsy. It took quite a bit for me to, not everyone would have, and nobody else did. UFO researchers or anyone else really come out and say, hey, this heavily promoted television program, which became almost like a series on Fox News Channel about Fox Television about the alien autopsy, was bogus. But it was bogus. And I called it from the very beginning. I said I was quoting the Daily News. It was a picture of the producer of that alien autopsy film, and there was a picture of me, and he was saying it was real, and I was saying it was a P.T. Barnum type of hoax, and it turned out I was right. They had huge ratings, and then the producer had the nerve, and Fox had the nerve, Fox Television had the nerve to run still another special program, which was seen worldwide, in which they, after building it up all this way, then they said, well, we discovered that it was a hoax. So they sort of had their cake and ate it too.
Yeah, so they kind of got their laugh and continue to promote the propaganda that there's nothing there. I understand that, and it's just, it's a crying shame that the corruption is the problem, Mike. There's a level of corruption in almost every field that you can imagine. People want to believe and hope for the best, but the reality is that money rules the day. And if you're getting paid real well to keep your mouth shut, guess what? You're going to keep your mouth shut. Or
I was interviewed. I did a news conference here in New York quite a long time ago already, but about the UFO cover-up, and we had some coverage, including the Associated Press, which is very important. Sent one of the veteran reporters, and this was at the time of we were talking about the Rockefeller initiative with the White House. And the reporter, who was a veteran guy, was really interested in it, and he was going to do a story, and where it was left was that he was going to call Rockefeller, or Rockefeller's office anyway, and try to get some comment and stuff, and they're going to put out the story. They're going to do a big story on it. Well, Rockefeller's, he still was, he was pretty conservative in certain ways. I mean, after all, one of the Rockefeller brothers, the oldest of them. And Rockefeller's people, Henry Diamond and his lawyers and stuff, decided that they didn't want it out. They wanted it, kept under wraps. And so they killed the story, plain and simple. The Associated Press did not put out that story. Now, Shepard Smith, one of the anchormen for the Fox News channel, attended that news conference, and I saw him in the back, and he's nodding his head as if he believes everything I'm saying. And then afterwards he said, "Do you mind if we do a stand-up interview with you?" I said, "Fine." So we started talking, and he was trying every way he could to snipe at me to put the whole thing into question. And he finally, in his desperation, he leans over, and the camera's running, and he says, "You wouldn't be an alien, would you?" And I turned back. I said, "No, are you?" And that's how the piece ended. But he did say, he also said that, when and if the aliens land, that Mike wasn't going to be able to say that he told us. So that was at the time, by the way, of the release of the Independence Day movie, which Fox had a role in as well.
Mike, did they ever release that interview?
What was that?
Did Shepard ever release that interview?
Oh yeah, no, that was shown. Yeah, that was broadcast.
All right, well that's good. At least that.
And he did a very good. He did a very good job at. I don't know how he did it because he didn't take any notes and they didn't film this part, as far as I know. He did a very good job of summarizing my statements, which went into a lot of different things. And but then he tried this trick at the end, and that's how they ended the piece.
Right.
That's how they did it. But Bill O'Reilly, I was on his show when he was it was the 50th anniversary. This was a long time ago. 50th anniversary of the Roswell crash. And at the time, Fox News Channel was just starting up in New York. So I was on a ridiculous number of shows. I'd go on one show, and the producer for another show would be standing by waiting to book me for their show. I got on 5-6 shows in 1 week, and Bill O'Reilly saw that, and so he booked me for his show, and I did O'Reilly's show, and at that time he didn't really know much about UFOs at all.
Right.
But he, he for whatever reason, he seemed, friendly and open to some, fairly open to it. And he said that he made me promise that he said, "You're the guy that the aliens are going to contact if they contact anyone. What? You're the one they're going to call." He said, "Promise me that you'll bring one of these extraterrestrials to my studio and allow me to have the first."
How arrogant can this man be to say something like that? I'm so sorry. It's amazing to me that anyone would say that.
Well, he's since people like Shirley MacLaine and others, not very many others. He's never, by the way, he never had me back on again. I tried to get back to him on the Rockefeller thing and many other stories. He absolutely has not refused, but just been incommunicado, his producers, whatever. They've never put me back on again.
I'm surprised Larry King didn't ask you to come on his show. Because he, at least being controversial to some degree, I thought he would have had you on the show because he had...
Larry, did this subject, covered this subject very, very strongly. And I did try a couple of times to get on to his show for whatever reason. I mean, everyone wants on that show. And when he had the UFO subject on, he had some very good people on. Stanton was on and some others. So, for whatever reason it was, I didn't get on. I certainly wanted to. And now he's not with CNN anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was with the RT the last time I checked, but I don't even know if he has a show on that anymore.
I think he has a show. I don't know if it's on RT or not, but he does have a show. It's amazing how the media is changing so rapidly.
I know. In my opinion, Mike, I think the alternative media is becoming the mainstream media because I think so many people are just so sick of hearing the monotonous baloney that these people put out. And they all carry the same story. I mean, one minute you have it on Fox and 10 minutes later it's on CNN. They all carry the same story. They all carry the same byline, the whole baloney. What's believable in that? There's no believability in the mainstream media anymore.
Yeah, no, I know. I agree.
It's a bunch of malarkey. But I wanted to ask you about Lawrence Rockefeller. Basically, there's, in my opinion, there's always the one black sheep in all the family. I guess we're all the black sheep here in the mainstream media, which I call now. And I think Lawrence really understood what was going on. He didn't want to live in that. I guess that manipulation and cover-up for to live that lie anymore, and he was truly trying to make a concerted effort to break some information, but obviously, the influence.
He believed very, very strongly in it. I mean, to the degree that he financed not only those meetings by former military people, the preparation for their possible testimony before Congress, but he also financed Dr. Stephen Greer's group, and efforts to contact extraterrestrials using lasers and that sort of thing to make contact. So he was, very, very deeply involved and very serious about the subject.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, he was very influential in that respect, and by
the way, and he also, as I recall, he also gave quite a bit of money toward crop circle research as well.
My curiosity would run to this, and we got about 2 minutes before we go to break here, and then we got about 11, 12-minute break, Mike, right. Just so you know. But JFK Jr. was very interested in what was going on. Do you believe or know of any deeper inside information that, John F. Kennedy really wanted to blow the whistle on this whole deal, and maybe that was part of the assassination process, regardless, but part of that he wanted to dismantle the CIA, FBI.
I was disappointed with John F. Kennedy Jr.'s reaction to the report that I got a copy of to him, because almost all of the members of Congress, basically, they didn't pay any serious attention to it. His magazine, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s magazine, did a short story in which it was just kind of a general kind of fairly vague piece that didn't have much of a point. It really was very, very disappointing. I was hoping that he might feel the need to go on a soapbox on this, but he didn't at all. He and his editors, they just passed.
Whole Agenda Radio Show to the second hour of the broadcast. Of course, I'm your host, Robert Peppino, broadcasting to you live right here on Revolution on freedomslips.com. And, of course, I appreciate each and every one of you. I thank you for your participation in this network and helping it grow. And I thank you for your participation in keeping my show on air. I love each and every one of you. Truly do. You know what? Without you, I would not be here. We'll get back to, our guest in just a second, which is Mike Luckman in the first hour. And for all of you just joining, I'll do a quick intro for you once again who Mr. Mike Luckman is. But of course, top of the hours, I always like to promote the station. We need your help. We need your support. Now, you have made us the number one listener-sponsored broadcast on the air, and we want to continue to grow and reach a wider berth of audiences. We want to reach as many listeners as we possibly can, and you all make that possible. You make it happen with your donations and support. You know, I love saying this. I know I probably sound so repetitive, and you guys, I'm sorry. For all of you who've heard me say this probably 100 times, my dear friend Lori Fenton says if every one of our listeners would just contribute $1, my God, this station would be flourishing beyond belief. Reality is, what you can donate is what you can donate, but we appreciate your support. Hawk's got some great deals. The 2013 Best of shows, edited, commercial-free, $30. Can't beat that. He's got the 35,000 non-GMO seeds with a storable shelf life of 25 years for $100. What a great deal. And of course the USB bullet drive with the 900 survival documents for $50. Just great deals all around. We need your support and help. You know what? If you can't even support us that way, also go to the YouTube channels, our YouTube channel for Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Guess what? You can listen to your show, or a show that you missed, and just suffer through the, 15, 20-second commercial. Helps put a few cents in the pocket of the network. Everything is help, but I appreciate you. I want to thank you over and over again, because without you, I wouldn't be here. Now, for all of you just joining us right now in the second hour, my guest has been Mr. Mike Luckman. Now, Mr. Luckman was the first person to blow the whistle on the Roswell UFO crash, Star Wars, and the roles played by former President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Ronald Reagan, and Jimmy Carter, and even widening the cosmic cover-up dubbed Aliengate. Now, Mr. Luckman also leaked the story of a secret UFO report financed by the late billionaire, philanthropist, Lawrence Rockefeller, and distributed to 1,000 movers and shakers on the world stage. John F. Kennedy Jr. requested that Mr. Luckman send him a copy of the same briefing document sent to all members of Congress. Of course, also featured on many major TV networks, CNN, Fox News Channel, The Bill O'Reilly Factor, Geraldo, Fox and Friends, so on and so forth. Mr. Luckman is the heir apparent to renowned Planet X author Zachariah Stitchin and Tom Van Flandern, former chief astronomer for the United States Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. And also, he is the author of Alien Rock, and this is what we're going to be talking about in the second hour of the show. Now, for all of you who want to call in, you're more than welcome to ask Mr. Luckman any question you like. The call-in number is 347-688-9202. Again, 347-688-2902. And Mr. Luckman, welcome back to the show for the second hour. This is, I just enjoy talking. This has been very, very fascinating.
Well, there's lots to talk about.
Yes, there is. But Alien Rock. Now, I'm a musician. I've been a musician all my life, Mike. So this is near and dear to my heart, because I know that a lot of musicians it has to do something with the music, or the I don't know how to describe it, but I guess it's the vibrance that a musician is able to produce through through chord structures and notes that somehow attracts our brothers and sisters up there, and they always end up finding us somehow, somewhere.
Well, actually, it goes sort of the other way. musicians, rock musicians, and other creative types of individuals. A team of Belgian scientists recently released their findings that the human brain in creative people, in musicians and artists and others, is actually wired differently than everyone else's brain. And that would be, to me, a direct explanation as to why they're interested in reaching creative individuals, including rock musicians.
Well, Mike, you know what? I tell you, like when I'm a guitarist, a keyboardist, but mostly my main instrument is guitar. And when I look at my guitar, I don't look at it as playing a chord pattern or a chord structure, but I look at it as that I'm creating an individual piece, and I'm trying to express my soul value in those notes that I'm playing, and like there's, when I play it doesn't have to be a chord, but even just a particular note, it will make the hair on the back of my head stand up, Mike. And this has been my whole life. You find that the other musicians you've talked to experience the same thing.
Well, I don't know about the hair on the back of your head, but I do know that that's the same thing that has been been said by many people who have been eyewitnesses to UFO sightings, that the hair on the back of their head stood up, including, by the way, Elvis Presley was once in the desert, and he spoke about that phenomenon. What I found, my new book, by the way, my first book was called Alien Rock, the Rock and Roll Extraterrestrial Connection. And it's been read by quite a number of leading Hollywood celebrities, and even Prince William read it when he was courting Kate Middleton. The new book is going to be called Rock Stars, Hollywood, and Alien Contact, Celebrities' Inside Secrets. It's much, much broader and much higher impact than the first book, although the first book was important. The new book deals with not only UFOs, but also the full range of the paranormal, and not only rock stars, although it's mainly rock stars, but it also goes into other celebrities, Hollywood celebrities and others. The number of names of people who crop up in my book, we're dealing with literally hundreds of individuals, maybe 100 or 150 or even maybe up to 200 rock stars. It really is a phenomenon that permeates a lot. And similarly with celebrities in general, there's so many highly recognizable names in there, and there are all kinds of surprises. I don't want to give away much of the content, but
sure.
But basically my first book talked about the icons, Jimi Hendrix, David Bowie, John Lennon, Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, and others. And what really got me interested in this was that I discovered that not only did they believe in UFOs, but they actually had UFO encounters of one sort or another. And then, for example, when I was researching about John Lennon, I found out, and the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, that other members of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones had also had experiences, or at the very least expressed strong views on it. So there's a definite, correlation, a definite link between these celebrities and extraterrestrials. Now, zeroing in on the musical end of it, specifically, one of the very wild things that I've found is that many artists, including very well-known artists, have experienced what I'll call automatic writing, where they have written music that has practically written itself, that they just have been conduits or channels for the music, which of course begs the question, well, channels for what? I mean, for what purpose and who are these channels? What is the nature of the channels? Now, to sort of summarize this, and biggest of the big names, I mean, the Beatles, for example, channel their music. Paul McCartney can to this day read or write music.
Right.
And John Lennon had what he referred to as his muse, a female muse, and that when she went away for a period of some time, everything dried up. He wasn't able to write at all. And this repeats itself over and over and over again. Now, not all of these spirits or entities or extraterrestrial beings or whatever you might want to call that might be in contact with the rock musicians, and in fact I'm convinced are in contact with rock musicians. They may not all be benevolent. Now, some of the Christian fundamentalists they've gone overboard on this, but they have pointed out that that some of the heavy metal groups particularly are very, dark. It doesn't take an expert to know that their lyrics can be very, very dark, but many of those, including Ozzy Osbourne and lots of others,
sure,
have talked about this phenomenon where the music where they're just writing it down, but that it's being basically sent to them from some external force. I call it extraterrestrial musical forces, just as to put a label on it, but
sure,
but it does go very, very deep. And I'll tell you something else, and I'm giving your listeners something that nobody knows about really. I am absolutely convinced that Jimi Hendrix was, I hate to use the word possessed, but he had some kind of a spirit, the exact nature remains to be seen, inside of him that dogged him his entire career, that influenced his music, and that he was very upset about, and that very much was something that was real to him. Has been confirmed by his by a number of his associates, including Alan Douglas, who is his producer. In fact, he currently runs in charge of the Jimi Hendrix estate. A former girlfriend of Jimmy's, a number of other associates. And John Lennon had the experience, and others, very well-known people, have had these experiences as well. So, what's going on here, I don't know exactly. But what I have realized is that the need for this new book to delve into some things that the first book didn't go into that thoroughly, or in some cases not at all. So I'm dealing with ghosts, and I'm dealing with the Ouija board, and I'm dealing with Egyptian mysticism. And you would be surprised to see how many of these rock stars have been involved with one or more of these areas. And then I go even into topics like life extension, but more than life extension, reincarnation, and on and on and on. So, but on the musical side of it, for example, UFOs have been seen at many, many, many rock concerts, and continue to be seen and filmed at rock concerts. Large gatherings like that, but particularly rock concerts. And U2, Bon Jovi, Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, Ozzy Osbourne, and on and on.
Well,
yeah.
Mike, do you believe that, because these large gatherings are taking place, there's much more than just, the experience of the music, but there's a deeper spiritual experience being, experienced at that moment, because the music is moving people in a certain way that it's opening them up spiritually, and because, in the UFO community, you hear that, they tell us, at least from my point of view, is that they want us to grow up spiritually, and maybe this is what people are experiencing a small glimmer of, and maybe this is why that they may be showing up at these concerts.
Well, I think you're right, but the question to be answered also is why it would appear. I don't want to add fuel to the Christian fundamentalists because they do go overboard, to say the least. But nonetheless, there seems to be something going on with some of the music that's negative. And the spirits, let's call them spirits, entities, or beings, or whatever the
sure,
might
be, of course.
would appear to be not benevolent. That's the feeling that I have. But it's very complex, For example, like with Jimi Hendrix, even though his girlfriend said that it was that she thought it was a negative being that he was that was literally inside of him in some way. What did his music stand for? I mean, his music was about love and peace and that sort of thing.
Right.
So why would that be happening? On the other hand, she claimed that Jimmy, broke down and cried and tore his, it was like tearing at his hair, and he was really bothered by this thing that whatever might have been inside of him. So, there are no quick answers on this, but it is a continuing phenomenon, and it does cry out for some serious questions.
Interesting. You brought up John Lennon earlier. Now, John Lennon was always controversial. He always spoke out about the government. He knew what was going on long, long ago. And then of course he was assassinated. But you mentioned the fact that he had a muse. Now, did he feel? Do you believe, from your perspective, that he had a positive entity working with him, yet the controversy he was writing about was on the negative side?
The controversy is?
Yeah, I mean, because he was very controversial in everything he wrote, lyrically. Yet, did he feel that he was being,
No, he did not know. This is what the interesting thing is. I mean, even though their message, let's say Jimmy's and John Lennon's was much the same sort of message, but John seemed to be indicating that his so-called muse, was friendly. In fact, the only thing that he did say was that, and this wasn't really negative, but just that, basically the muse would, keep him awake until he was done writing the song. But that's as far as it went. But with Jimmy, it seems to be a whole different story. And one of his big albums was called Axis, Bold as Love, and Axis, AXIS, is apparently the nickname, according to some of his former associates, is a nickname that he used for this, invisible being that he thought was inside of him.
Right. He also mentioned, Michael Jackson. Interesting that when Michael Jackson died, that and I think you're aware of this, that his ghost was filmed inside his mansion or his estate.
And there are plenty of things that have happened with the Beatles regarding John Lennon's supposed ghost, and lots of rock stars and other celebrities have had these experiences, and people who aren't celebrities have these experiences. It's all part of a multi-dimensional situation, and but it definitely does correlate with UFOs, because after all, UFOs are an interdimensional phenomenon. They seem to be able to come in and out of our dimension in a solid
all the time.
And people who are being abducted are usually, the first thing they talk about is that they're being transported through the closed window of their apartment or home, because most time the windows are in fact closed. So that relates more to kind of an out of body type of experience.
Right.
So and yet they return back, and when they come back, relatively safe and sound, although they might be shook up. But some of them anyway. Some of them have physical scars that they connect with their experience. So there are many more questions than there are answers. But this stuff all seems to be interrelated. I'm convinced of that. And as I say, the book literally deals with hundreds of well-known rock stars and other artists, particularly actors and actresses.
Mike, you mentioned shook up, so pardon the pun, but all shook up. What about Elvis Presley?
Well, yeah, Elvis was extremely involved with this. I've become sort of friends with Larry Geller, who was Elvis's hair. He started out as Elvis's hairstylist, and he was his hairstylist, and he even lived at Graceland. He became Elvis's closest friend, and he's the one who turned Elvis on to all the spiritual stuff and New Age stuff, and he actually put together a library for Elvis of 300 books on metaphysical subjects, UFOs, etc. And Elvis had it in several trunks, and he would actually take these books with him when he went on a vacation somewhere he's going to be away for a while. He would take these and he would read them, and he even would, underline them, and he was really got into this. And Elvis had a lot of, quite a number of UFO sightings during his lifetime, and there's an account in my first book about that there might have been some kind of, more direct contact in his case. A strange blue light that allegedly was seen over at least according to his father, Vernon Presley, was seen over the small shack in Tupelo, Mississippi when Elvis was born. Apparent or possible communication with angelic-type beings when he was quite young, who sort of showed him a picture of a little film kind of thing, of what his life, would be like as a performer in the future. And there's a guy on stage with a, big white jumpsuit, whatever, and it's Elvis. And of course, he doesn't quite realize that it's him in the future.
Right.
And so Elvis is very, very heavily involved with it. And by the way, also, as did Jimmy, believed that that the end times were coming. And Jimmy forecasted, Elvis didn't put any date on it, any year on it, but Jimmy forecasted for 30 years from then, which fell maybe about 10 years shy of today, but they were concerned about it.
Well, what about in the new genre of rock? Any of these younger guys now that you've talked to experiencing the same thing?
Yeah, the icons are the ones that I concentrated on, but there are all kinds of people who are out there who've had, who both have strong beliefs. And I'll tell you, Kurt Cobain, he committed suicide, but Kurt Cobain was very into this. When he was growing up, he fancied himself as having a friend who was an extraterrestrial, and it's going to be in my new book.
Well, Mike, I'm looking forward to you releasing a new book. I know you do have a radio show, Mike. Did you put it on hiatus, or are you just?
Yeah. It's on hiatus now because, frankly, I'm involved in a bunch of other projects. So one of them is a possible a film. Well, actually, I'm trying to sell a film or a TV reality series based on my first book and the contents of the second book. And we've been at this now for years on the first book, and I've had through the years maybe about five, serious nibbles in different companies, even HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, Fox. They're all interested, but it's kind of a tricky thing because it's best done as a documentary, and a documentary, I can produce people who are, friends and wives and relatives of the stars. To get the stars themselves, I can get them too, but, they need to be paid, or there's always an issue of rights because you want to have their music, and it becomes a very expensive project.
Yeah.
Even the History Channel was very interested. So, still working on that, and hopefully, get a deal, and, working on a number of other projects. I will, the radio show, Starship One Radio, will be, returning, but I'm trying to make it part of a bigger, a bigger thing where the, constant majority under whose banner this is, can really, start to, expand. And some serious money is needed for that to happen. I was involved with a series of concerts. This goes back about 4 years ago, called the Signal of Space Concerts. And the idea was they were essentially UFO Woodstocks, to say it in a quick way. The idea would be to have major artists performing and to literally beam the music to points in outer space where we thought there might be intelligent life to receive it.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love that.
But it was also it was going to be done most of the financing was coming from Berlin, so it was going to be done in Berlin, in upstate New York, like where the old Woodstock festivals were held, the reunion festivals and all that, and in Tokyo. We raised, we got as far as $4 million under contract. It required a minimum of $25 million because of various factors, namely the economy going south at the time.
Right.
The investors backed out after giving us a couple $100,000, which quickly went for, salaries, expenses, what have you, office rental and all that. We did have major sponsors that were interested at the time, including Daimler Chrysler, for example, which was headquartered in Berlin. My partner was from Berlin. And so it never happened, unfortunately. But I'm always up for something like that, if it comes along.
I'll tell you, I would love to see something like that happen.
It
would be extraordinary. It would be extraordinary. But again, it needs a backing. You need a lot of investment and investors to participate. And again, the economy is not in best of shapes. We're hanging by a thread, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. No, I think the economy is going to totally collapse. It seems to be artificially, I'm no expert on this, but it really does seem to be artificially propped up, and it's a worldwide thing, and when the dominoes start to fall, watch out. And that's going to happen. And that combined with the environmental catastrophes, which are having a big effect on world economy, it adds up to a sorry picture. What really freaks me out, frankly, are the Pentagon's plans for so-called zombie invasion. Because using that template, they are basically preparing the public for anything that they deem to be, dangerous to the public, which includes something like even the radiation problem, which is not getting any better. Fallout from Fukushima.
Oh yeah.
All of those things, and needless to say, I mean, the use of drones and the wholesale spying on citizens that's happening.
And now this whole thing with the MERS, That's, you're seeing it popping up in articles left and right. Well, now there's how many cases here in the United States? I think it's 5 or 6. I'm not real sure. But now you're seeing this whole thing being propagated forward. I don't, Mike, I don't even know how real that is, if that's just being used as a scare tactic from governmental officials, so on and so forth. I don't know. But yeah, you can definitely see this.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I found is this. Unfortunately, most people, the vast majority of people, do not want to know about this stuff because, it ultimately involves their mortality.
Yes.
And they really run away from it. And not everyone feels this way, but I certainly do, and I know lots of other people do. I'd rather know what's coming than just be hit. Now, ultimately there's no safe place to run or to hide, but there are relatively safer places throughout the world, in the United States and elsewhere, and there are things like, mentioned the food storage and stuff. There are things that you can do. I was during the Hurricane Sandy here in New York. I was caught off guard. I had told the New York Daily News reporters, I had done an event here, and I told the New York Daily News reporters at the time that New York was in danger of major flooding. 8 months later, I'm not a psychic, but 8 months later, it happened. And I was here, and I was telling you, I was sitting in my apartment in Greenwich Village for 5 days without electric.
Are you talking about Katrina, Mike?
No, I'm talking about Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, Sandy, I'm sorry. Well, that's what I meant, Sandy, not Katrina. My apologies.
Yeah. Well, and at first I thought, well, I'll tough it out. It won't be so bad. I had candles, lit by candlelight. Well, let me tell you something. It took me probably 10 days to 2 weeks to recover just psychologically. We're not used to living by candlelight like in a cave. And,
right.
And at the end of about 4 days, my money started to run out, and the ATMs, of course, weren't working, and there was nowhere to go.
Right.
Things like batteries and candles, if you could get them, they jacked the prices up.
Right.
There was a run on the supermarkets.
Of course.
Supermarkets usually have about a 2-day supply.
Mike.
What's that?
I said capitalism at its best, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, people aren't prepared, and to the degree that you can be prepared, frankly speaking, if I'm correct about about Planet X, it's not that the Planet X is going to crash into us. Nobody's saying that. But just as bad, perhaps, or almost as bad, is the fact we have all these meteors coming at us, and that sooner or later the odds are not going to be our favor.
Sure.
And just one major impact, it's not going to eradicate the whole Earth, but the environmental impact and the economic impact and the fallout is going to be enormous, particularly if it hits a major city. And that's going on at the same time that all these other catastrophes are going on.
Yeah.
And so
well, Mike,
the picture is not the picture. There's no reason for optimism here.
Yeah, I mean, the world is globally connected. So let's say that if there is a splashdown by a rock in the Atlantic or Pacific, it doesn't matter. Even if it destroys the infrastructure of a certain amount of coastal plains, that will affect the rest of the world because we are globally connected in this infrastructure of communication and of course in transportation. So you affect even a small area, the whole world will be affected by that without a question.
Oh, yeah, no question about it.
But let me ask you, Michael, what have you done for your own preparations? I mean, I've done, as best as I can with food, and the gold and this and that and whatnot, and prepare for whatever, contingency may happen upon, my little individual life here in Phoenix, Arizona. What about you? It is
very, very difficult. I mean, yes, food-wise and that sort of thing, yes. But beyond that, I mean, unless there's warning, in my case, unless there's warning, there are 8 million people in New York. If there was a need to evacuate the city, the transportation, the subways and the buses and the roads would be absolutely clogged. There would be no way that most people could get out. You would literally have to have a helicopter, and you can imagine that whoever had a helicopter would have access to a helicopter, and not many would.
Right.
That they would have to be armed, because otherwise somebody else is going to try to hitch a ride.
Sure.
So it's like survival of the fittest at that point, and it's very, very difficult to plan. But on the other hand, there are relatively safer areas in the United States and elsewhere. There's a guy by the name of Stan Deo who his wife put out a...
Stan's been on my show.
It's called Prudent Places.
Yep, Stan's been on my show many times. We've talked about this, yeah.
Right. And so there are relative, but a place that is not as prone to flooding might be prone to earthquakes, might be prone to whatever. So that's the problem. And, you really have to, luck plays a big, big role in this. And what we haven't mentioned, I think you were interested in talking about it a little bit, was the pole shift scenario.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, if the passage of Planet X causes the Earth to roll over, basically, to the outer skin of the Earth to rotate, then all bets are off. I mean, that's the worst possible scenario that I could think of.
Well, it would be catastrophic worldwide. I don't think there would be more than 1% of the population worldwide left.
Yeah, well, it does get to those kind of numbers. I don't know about 1%, but it does get to very, very, something that we really need to be very concerned about. We can't do anything about it, but that's something that would be a worst-case scenario.
Well, I mean, what do you say? Let me play devil's advocate for 1 second and say this. And you're telling somebody this scenario. We're watching all these things unfold. They say, you know what, Mike? Whatever happens. I'm going to live my life as best as I can, enjoy my life. What do you say to them?
Well, what I say to them is okay. You should value every minute, because you never know. First of all, you could get run over by a car or some truck or something.
Right.
No, I mean you should cherish and use your time wisely. I would say that for people who think that in terms of their financial planning, you don't want to spend your last dollar, but you do want to invest some of your money in basic supplies, so that you have at least a chance at survival, depending on what goes down.
Mike, there's so many people who basically plan for, even just, what happened, I think, was last year with the tornado. It was a mile wide that just devastated. I think it was Oklahoma. Just devastated a community. Now, if you had preparations or provisions, and you did have that underground cellar, you know what? Your life would probably just be a little better than most people who never provided for those, situations that happen to spare the moment.
Yeah, it's very, very hard, but doing something is better than doing nothing. I mean, there's this guy who has building a huge underground shelter. It's called
that would be right, Robert
Vivino.
Yeah, yes.
Vivino.
Yes.
I had him on my show. He's a really nice guy. It seems to be real from everything I could tell. At first, I thought that it was just, most of it hype. It seems to be real. But the first thing I said to him is, hey, I'm not everyone's like this, but I happen to be claustrophobic. I said the idea of going underground in a former missile silo and living under there for a year because they would seal a hatch for 1 year if they felt that it was an emergency and that this was the time that people were going to enter it and live in it, and hundreds of people at that. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that living underground with a thing sealed for a year with hundreds of people.
I would definitely say it would be tough for some people, without a question. It would definitely be tough for some people.
Not only that, but even Robert would admit that, depending on what happens, it's not impervious to all kinds of things. I mean,
right.
It could be flooding or other things that could affect it. So it's a very intriguing concept that he has, but how practical it is, I'm not sure. It is also happens to be an expensive thing. A person's not going to get in there, or a couple's not going to get in there for under a couple $100,000. I guess.
I think because I did listen to that interview, by the way, and I think he mentioned that per person, I think it was $40,000 per person. Yeah. So yeah, definitely not cheap. I mean, for most people, they're not going to be able to afford that. For most people, they're going to, deal with the situation as it happens, here on.
People are trapped by their circumstances. Yeah.
So it's a matter. I don't know. I used to be so that, everybody's, prepare as best you can, do the best you can. But then I look at the other side of it, that if we're all here, Mike, we're all here living this life, and we chose to come here at this time for a specific reason, whatever the events are that are supposed to unfold, that maybe we're supposed to be exactly where we are because, I'm not sure where you stand on this, but I absolutely believe in reincarnation. We have lived here hundreds and hundreds of times throughout the centuries and millennia, and I think if this is the scenario that's meant to be, it is just one more experience for us to understand, to move forward in our own conscious evolution as we grow.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. By the way, there's a lot about, I met Michael Jackson. There's a lot in my book about Michael, both good and not so good. But there's a statue talking about reincarnation. There's a statue that's like a clone of Michael Jackson. It's an Egyptian statue that's something like 3,200 years old. It dates back to the time of King Tut. It's in the Frick Museum in Chicago. The photograph's on the internet, and it is a dead ringer for Michael Jackson, the older Michael Jackson, long hair and all that. And the nose happens to be partially broken off. Jim Michael, of course, had the problem with the nose. So it's
right.
Almost like 100% overlay. You put Michael Jackson's picture in this thing, and of course a lot of his fans are going there and stuff. Just intriguing. It doesn't, no cigar, no proof of any kind, but it does get your eyes popping.
Well, you know what, Michael, I have to say, I don't believe in coincidences. I think everything happens for a reason. Me doing this show, you being on the show with me, to have this, conversation and let everybody experience this. I think everything is meant to happen for a reason. It is all part of it. I think life is extraordinary. I think the events that unfold in our daily lives from second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour, month to month, year to year, I think it is all part of a process of learning. And as we move forward, I think we carry this on now, and that's the whole thing about reincarnation, is that we, not all of us have the, collective memory of the lives we have lived in the past, but you can see that through many of the stories that have come out, throughout time, of those collective memories. And I think they're telling us, saying, look, live this experience, understand it for what it is, carry that on forward, because you're going to have many, many, many more experiences, whether it's here on Earth or whatever dimension or whatever
Right.
plane,
Right.
and you're going to use that collective consciousness to help your soul conscious entity to expand, to help others, and for your eventual return to source. Now, source is, I use source, it could be God, it could be however you look at whatever is creation through this whole process. But it's an extraordinary,
Right.
you have this extraordinary conversation with, a person like yourself, and you go, how do these things take place? How do these things manifest? I mean, 100 years ago, Michael, most people would not be having this conversation, would not be aware of anything we'd be talking about right now. But as time progresses through this non-linear existence, because everything is simultaneous, you find yourself in this conversation or engaged in, in whatever throughout your life. It's extraordinary.
I think it's all about a learning process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, one thing I found about Michael Jackson that sort of is startling. I had put it in my first book, but I dug further on it. I'm still working on it. But he was he had a room, a secret room at Neverland. I think it was like off his bedroom, perhaps, but it was on the second floor of Neverland. And there were no photographs, as far as I know, of the room, but it was a secret room that he described as having rotating mirrors, which, of course, is odd in itself. And he used that room to communicate with Liberace, who had passed on, and who was a very close friend of his. And they had, music very much in common. And he would repeatedly, reach out to Liberace, and apparently had some kind of two-way communication, at least in his mind, that was going on.
Wow.
Now Liberace, though, turns out to have been a friend of Anton LaVey.
You're kidding.
Who, from the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
LaVey has passed away, but he was. And LaVey was not only a follower and a believer in Aleister Crowley, who preached use of mirrors to contact spirits of those who had passed on, but LaVey also had a infinity mirror in his house in I think it was in San Francisco, with demonic kind of entities as part of that, that infinity mirror and the design of it.
Mike, I also saw a photograph of Anton LaVey and Sammy Davis Jr., if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Sammy Davis Jr. was a member for a while. He ultimately left there, but he was an enthusiastic member for a while and a friend of his. Apparently Marilyn Monroe might have been, and Jane Mansfield was very close with him, was romantically connected with him, and also was a member, and there are photographs, the kind of frightening photographs of ceremonies and stuff with her and LaVey, who dressed sort of looked like the Emperor Ming, so I don't know that Michael was, aware even that Liberace was a member at one time, but he was playing, in my opinion, he was playing with fire.
I got you.
So anyway, it's one of lots of
Mike, we got
interesting stories.
We got about a minute left. I want you to plug your book. When's your next book coming out?
Well, first of all, Alien Rock you can get it's still available through Amazon.com. And my next book it's probably about a good year off. Just in the process of writing it now, and it's called Rock Stars, Hollywood, and Alien Contact, Celebrities Inside inside secrets.
Now, your website is still cosmicmajority.org, correct?
That's correct, cosmicmajority.org.
Okay, and when's your show going to be starting back up, Mike? Real quick.
I'm not sure. It really depends, as I say.